News has come out that the Toronto Raptors turned down a massive trade package for OG Anunoby that would have included 3 first-round draft picks. So we'll discuss that, including an OG Anunoby injury update. We also got some news surrounding Fred VanVleet as he has parted ways with his current agency, which could have some serious impact in terms of where he could land this offseason and what the Raptors want to do with him ahead of this year's trade deadline. And we also had a couple of insiders speak out on the current Toronto Raptors situation. So lots of stuff to break down. Without further ado, let's jump into the first topic of discussion. And the first topic we're looking at is the Toronto Raptors rejecting 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. And just quickly, before I forget, we're very, very close to 27,000 subscribers as of recording. So if you haven't hit that sub button, you're enjoying the content, definitely hit subscribe. But OG Anunoby, he's a guy that it feels like no Toronto Raptors fan wants to trade. He's the quintessential 3-and-D player in the modern NBA. I mean, you look at his stats and he is just the perfect guy in terms of playing his role, right? 17 points, 6 rebounds. His three-point shooting is continuing to improve this season. He's getting 2 steals a night. He's big. He's strong. He can guard any single position. One of the few guys that can actually guard any single position. You know, it's not just used as sort of a positive quote to prop up their defense, and not just Raptors fans are happy with OG Anunoby's performance, as there's teams across the league that would be very, very happy to acquire OG. And some teams are willing to throw out massive trade packages, as news has come out basically saying you want to move one core piece. Well, you have 4 available. And this is coming from Bruce Arthur, basically saying that the differences in potential return between Gary Trent Jr., VanVleet, and OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam range from minor upgrades to a bejeweled haul. You want to become Oklahoma City with draft picks and bunches. At least one team has previously offered 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby. So that's the juicy thing that's going around right now, right? Obviously, the article sees in the context the split in terms of trade value for guys out in the open market. The article went on to say that Gary might be able to net you some salary filler in a late first. You know, no one knows what Fred VanVleet could get, and obviously Pascal Siakam can get you more, but the market has been set. The precedent has been set, and the Toronto Raptors have turned it down. That 3 first-round picks were offered to Toronto in return for OG Anunoby. Now, how big of a deal is this? Because I'm seeing a lot of Raptors fans, especially ones that want to blow some kazoos, that want to, bring back the tank, right? Want to see this team get blown up. Say, Masai Ujiri, what are you doing, man? Not accepting 3 first-round picks for a guy that's dealt with some injuries and all that sort of stuff, but we don't have context in terms of how good those first round picks were, right? Are they coming from the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? Is Utah giving away those Timberwolves picks? Or are they coming from a team like the New York Knicks, who are unpredictable franchises that could easily give you an early or a lottery pick season in, season out? Are they protected picks, right? Is there top 15 protections? That means you're not going to be able to have these picks convey to players that you're actually interested in. And then you end up drafting scrubs at the end of the draft, right? These are all things that have to be taken into consideration before you start going at Masai Ujiri's head for turning down a trade that brings back 3 firsts for the Raptors. If I had to make a little take, this is obviously not insider or anything like that coming from the article. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some of those New York Knicks picks that are from Dallas with maybe some protections on it, right? That could have been an offer for OG Anunoby, but I don't know. If we're trading OG Anunoby for draft capital, I'd like it to be ideal draft capital, not just picks from a team that's going to be a top 5 team in the NBA. So you're getting the 25th pick 3 years in a row. OG Anunoby is worth more than that, in my opinion, but let me know in the comment section if you guys disagree. But to stay on the OG Anunoby topics, we have an injury update regarding OG himself, as he dealt with an injury. He had hobbled off the court in the Raptors' most recent game, didn't return to action following that night. It was pretty scary. Again, we talked about this guy's value. No one wants to see him. No matter if you want the Raptors to win, lose games, you don't want your young talent to be out sitting for extended periods of time, especially where OG has dealt with some injuries in the past. And for the tankers, people didn't want to see OG injured ahead of the trade deadline. But news has come out from Josh Lewinberg basically saying that OG's MRI came back clean. Nick Nurse said his ankle is fine and he's good to go for tomorrow's game in Sacramento. Nick said that he told me he's 94%. So not 95%. Not getting an A in high school or whatever the letter grades are these days, but he's getting there. He's pretty close. 94% is pretty solid. So hopefully OG Anunoby's not dealing with any aggravating injuries. I wouldn't say rush him back given how our season has gone at this point. I wouldn't expect him to play through anything, but nice to see OG Anunoby not going to be dealing with lingering ankle issues following that scary looking injury. But with the trade deadline coming up, it's a huge topic of discussion in these videos. You want to bet on the Toronto Raptors, whether it's the games or the trades, use the CoolBet Sportsbook. If you're interested in all the sports betting, using the link down below. They're a sportsbook regulated in Ontario. They're available all across Canada, and they give you the best odds, right? Especially if you sign up using the link down below, because you can get custom boosts, requests from myself or Goody, right, in our Cool Betters Discord. And, bet on the games. You can bet on player, stats for the over-unders and rebounds for Pascal Siakam, 3-point shots for Gary. Really anything you want to bet on, you can do it using the CoolBet app, especially if you get those custom requests. And we do have those trade deadline futures for these Raptors players. Right, you can see where OG Anunoby, who's been talked about in the first one, right, it's currently at a plus 175 for him to stay with the Toronto Raptors down there at that's what CoolBet is saying. So, if teams come in with 5 first-round picks, might not be the safest bet, but if you think he's going to stay and you want to speak into existence, definitely check out the CoolBet app. Shout out to CoolBet for supporting the channel. But the next thing we're taking a look at is Fred VanVleet fires his agent. Now, this one is interesting. This one is intriguing because Fred VanVleet is one of our biggest free agents this upcoming summer, potentially if he does turn down his player option. And he's a guy that is in a weird spot because he's sort of in that position of his career where you're in your prime, he's 29, right? Prime, centered middle prime of his career. This is the point where you can really get one of those big long-term contracts. And Fred has had some big contracts with the Toronto Raptors, but with the cap going up, Fred is expecting a big payday come this summer. But given his performance this year, he's not living up to his usual standards, even though box score wise, he's sort of returning to at least the all-star box score form. He was last season. The 3-point percentage is creeping up a little bit. 19 points per game, 6 assists, 1.5 steals is really solid. So, Fred VanVleet, he's getting better and better in terms of those numbers, but a lot of Raptors fans don't want to give him the bag. And the question is whether or not Masai Ujiri wants to give him the bag. And I don't know. Fred VanVleet's agent, right, obviously is going to be in the negotiation in those chairs. Maybe he hasn't been telling Fred VanVleet the right things, and Fred VanVleet said, no, I'm ensuring I'm getting this bag this offseason. Basically, it's come out that Fred VanVleet has parted ways with his agents, Parlay Sports and Entertainment, ahead of free agency, according to league sources. Fred VanVleet holds a $22.8 million player option for next season, but he's expected to decline that option and test free agency in the offseason. The 28-year-old will choose his next agent in the near future. So, Fred VanVleet, right, he's looking to secure his bag. He's looking to position himself as the best possible way to get that big contract this summer. I don't really blame him, right? We'd all be in the same position if we were all in Fred VanVleet's shoes, but whether or not he'll get that from the Toronto Raptors, that's a big question. But don't expect Fred VanVleet to take any homer discounts, any pay cuts, especially with what's happening. When players sort of fire their agents, they restructure this. It's usually ahead of a big contract. Like John Wall did this, signed with Rich Paul, got that super max contract from Washington, negotiated there, and that was certainly an overpay there for the Wizards, right? We've seen this happen multiple times in over a player's career. So, we'll see if this leads to Fred VanVleet moving or not, but we do have some news regarding Fred VanVleet's current situations, as it's come out that the Phoenix Suns are targeting Terry Rozier, Emmanuel Quickley, and Fred VanVleet as trade targets to eventually replace Chris Paul, according to Mark Stein. Paul's just played 27 of the 48 games this season due to injuries, and while Quickley is reportedly off the table, Rozier is seen as attainable from the Hornets, and Fred VanVleet's status is in flux due to the Raptors' struggles this season and his potential to decline his player option and become a free agent this summer. So, the Raptors, the Suns have been a team that's explicitly named as a potential free agent suitor for Fred VanVleet during the summer, but apparently, given how tumultuous their season has gone so far, similar to the Toronto Raptors, especially with injuries to Devin Booker and, as Mark Stein brought up, Chris Paul, right, maybe they'd be looking to get Fred VanVleet in a season early to this championship window, this sort of team that they have, at least if you have Chris Paul, counted as a part of that core, right? It's closing quickly. So maybe they want another guard in their backcourt to assure that they're not wasting a season of the current core that they have going down there in Phoenix. So, let me know if you guys think Phoenix would give us a decent haul. But the next thing we're taking a look at is the Raptors insider speaking on Gary Trent Jr.'s trade situation. Pretty well everything regarding the Toronto Raptors. And yesterday we brought up a video about how the Raptors are in talks to acquire Jakob Poeltl, and a deal that has gained some traction is a 3-team trade that would send Gary Trent Jr. out of Toronto. If you want to break that whole breakdown on that situation, definitely check out that video. But Michael Grange came out and gave his opinions and his takes on the Raptors, sort of what he's been told from Raptors insiders. I guess he is a Raptors insider, even though he's not always getting everything right. No one gets everything right. The Suggs one is the brutal one. Maybe you get a Suggs cake, and then we end up drafting Scotty Barnes. I digress. But basically, he's heard that consistently that there's no rush to move on from Gary Trent Jr. And while the reports that he's like the most likely guy to be traded, are out there, it's not something that's fake news or anything like that. It might be a little bit overblown. So, the expectation that Gary Trent Jr. is certainly getting moved, maybe that's not a surefire thing, a surefire bet. So maybe bet on him come back to the Toronto Raptors. He's in the Cool Bet Sportsbook. But, and he basically talked about how the range in terms of Gary Trent Jr.'s salary is going to be about $25 million per year. Didn't really go into detail about the length. It could be something shorter term. And then Jakob Poeltl will probably be around $20 million per year. So Jakob Poeltl could be a little bit cheaper than Gary Trent Jr., but I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. That's some little insights. I don't want to sink my teeth too much into what Michael Grange said because, he's kind of all over the place with his reports and how they work out. But, let me know what you guys think on that whole situation. But the final thing we're taking a look at is the Ringer gives an update on the Ringer gives a Raptors trade update. And KOC, Kevin O'Connor, he's a guy that has his sources, has had heard some chatter and stuff. And basically he came out and said that league sources doubt the Raptors will move Pascal or OG Anunoby unless the return is enormous. Think 2 or 3 unprotected first-round picks or young players with near equal talent. But it's more probable that VanVleet or Gary Trent Jr. will be moved since they are less talented and become free agents this summer. So a lot of reiterating reports that have come out. I know the reports are coming out left, right, and center. What are rumors? What are coming from substantiated reports? What are stuff with agendas and all that? But the more you hear things going around, the more likely it is to be true. So, where it's being reported in multiple places, right? That's maybe true, maybe not. I don't know. I'm covering everything regarding this trade deadline. So if you guys want to stay up to date with everything surrounding the Toronto Raptors, definitely hit that subscribe button. It means the world to us. But you guys are the best to make it this far. I'm signing out. Cheers.